Through the late 80s and into the early 90s, the world was introduced to quite a few Mega Man-like games in which the playable character defeats an enemy in order to gain that enemy's abilities. While there were many great games spawned from this concept, none have been quite as prolific and also long-lasting at this point as Kirby. The latest entry in the Kirby series was just released yesterday and introduces the idea of Star Allies, which basically allows you to carry around multiple abilities at once. But the concept of sucking enemies up and gaining their powers as Kirby himself is still very prominent. Just like most brand new releases in this series, Star Allies introduces 3 brand new abilities and also brings back quite a few that we haven't seen in a long time. ESP is an acronym for extrasensory perception, which is just a really fancy way to say that he gains some psychic powers. This copy ability was introduced just a couple years ago in Planet Robobot, and it's gained from swallowing the ghost-like NESP enemy. The main attack associated with this power is called PK Shift, which allows you to control a pretty sizable ball of energy that can damage enemies before exploding and doing even more damage. This ability does feel pretty overpowered from the size and damage of the ball, but it also leaves you pretty vulnerable during boss battles, as Kirby will always be stuck in one place while you control the big ball. ESP also pays homage to Ness from the Earthbound and Super Smash Bros. Games, through the PK titles of the moves that the ability provides, as well as the stylish baseball cap that looks very similar to the one worn by Ness. Upon capturing an NESP enemy, it will also put this hat on under its hood, which is another great nod to Earthbound. ESP was my favorite new ability in Planet Robobot, and I'm very happy to see it back in Star Allies. Most copy abilities are fairly simple to use, usually featuring a basic attack and then varying types of that attack depending on which direction your control stick is pointing. Artist, which is a brand new ability in Star Allies, tries to change this formula up with a couple slightly more complicated control inputs. As an artist, you'll be able to swing and sling paint with your brush as your basic attack, but if you hold down on the control stick before attacking, you'll instead pull out a canvas to draw a living picture of one of the 3 dream allies, who will then move forward and attack everything in front of them for a short amount of time, essentially giving you a short access to a 5th star ally. Then, even furthering the input complexity, you can go down, then up with your control stick before attacking to summon a giant block of stone, which he then carves into some sort of random sculpture. The sculpture that you get is random. It's usually a throwback to another game, such as the Dream Stock from Triple Deluxe, and can be swung around twice before smashing to the ground, which usually takes out any enemies within a small radius of Kirby himself. Because every copy ability is usually just as viable as the rest in just taking out enemies, it's nice to see that the Kirby team is trying to switch up the way that attacks work, even if it's just a few different control inputs that we're not used to. While using all of those crazy elemental abilities is always fun, for me there's just nothing quite like taking up a sword and slicing my way through a whole stage. The staff is another new ability introduced in Star Allies and brings the closest feeling to that fluidity that the sword brings that I've experienced in any of the recent games. The staff ability gives you a really cool looking hat as well as an extendable staff inspired by Sun Wukong's from the classic novel Journey to the West. Shout out to my Wukong mains in League of Legends, even though you probably don't exist. Just like the sword, this weapon is very fast with a few easy to perform combos and a super long range. In addition to his long range, Kirby can also perform a long jump by turning the staff into a pogo stick. This is also one of the abilities that can gain a permanent element buff, meaning depending on what your star allies look like, you can turn it into a sizzle, a blizzard, a bluster, a splash, or a zap staff, depending on which star allies you have in your party, like I said. This is one of the main new features in the new game, and seeing the effects on the staff is one of the best ways to showcase it. The Dream ally Bandana Waddle Dee has also traded in his old spear for a new staff, so it can be easily accessed in between stages from the Dream Palace. This staff may look basic, but is really one of the most fun abilities to use in the game. The last and perhaps most intriguing new ability introduced in this new game turns you into a top hat wearing web slinger. Similarly to the ice ability, Spider Kirby can immobilize his opponents through his web attack, then kick them off as a projectile that will also be able to take out enemies. Upon holding this attack button down, Kirby will release a larger web that can either act as a trap to encase enemies or be used by allies to perform a bigger jump in order to reach new heights. Upon raising your hands in the air by holding up on your thumbstick, you'll create an extra large web, allowing your friends to jump even higher. The enemies you acquire this ability from are called Komos, and they've been in the game for 20 years but never had a copy ability, until now. They've been redesigned to look a little more friendly and now have the ability to walk on 2 legs just like everyone else. These are arguably the most adorable characters I've ever seen, and if a plushie comes out, I'm getting it. With every Kirby game comes the disappointment from one of your favorite abilities not finding its way to the newest iteration. For Star Allies, I'm still very disappointed that my favorite ability, UFO, was scrapped. For a lot of people though, their favorite ability has been missing for over 20 years, but has now come back better than ever for Star Allies. Cleaning Kirby's only in-game appearance was in the 1997 title Dreamland 3, and then again on TV in the anime series, and was actually planned to be in the GameCube edition of Kirby before that game was scrapped altogether, so we haven't got to see a lot of cleaning power. Now it's back though, with a new and improved moveset, as well as the classic star pattern bandana first seen in the anime version. The broom cannot take on any elemental attributes, but can give out the blustering wind attribute when an ally raises their weapon in the air. When I first picked it up, I really wanted a flame broom for some reason, and while I didn't end up getting what I wanted, I was instead introduced to one of the funniest friend abilities in the game. Kirby will summon a vacuum, which can then be used to suck up all your friends before launching them across the screen to bounce back and forth and taking out almost all enemies in their wake. While this is essentially just a glorified friend throw, it's still cool to see the nuance that they put to all of these abilities. Cleaning is probably one of the least dangerous activities I can imagine, but somehow Kirby puts an edgy twist on the activity to make this one of the deadliest copy abilities in the game. Kirby is one of those super rare franchises that's lasted through 3 decades without a gigantic change to the fundamental gameplay. From Kirby's Adventure to Star Allies, you're still just running through a series of 2D stages and swallowing enemies for their powers. Aside from aesthetic enhancement, of course, the main thing that has kept these games relevant has been the introduction of new and exciting copy abilities. Star Allies introduces 3 brand new abilities, reworks quite a few returning ones, and also includes a couple dozen collaborative friend abilities. When you compare these new features to previous upgrades between titles, it's almost obvious to see that Kirby Star Allies is really the definitive Kirby title right now, for fans and newcomers alike. Let me know your favorite copy ability down in the comments below, leave a like on the video if you enjoyed, and subscribe to my channel for the latest Switch content available. This has been Max from MAXCULTURE, and thank you so much for watching.